first of all. Cheating is different things to different individuals.
Right.
What is your definition of cheating?
Well, the definition I have includes something that's secret, something that has an emotional closeness, and also something with chemistry. You know, for many people, you can be emotionally close, lying about it, not really having sex with the person, but that's cheating from the other person's point of view. So it's really when you add the secret that it becomes a problem. And I do think it's important for couples to define what's off and on limits. You know, for some couples, the boundaries are very tight, and for other couples, they're a little looser. But I think that people have to talk about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's talk about who's cheating more, men or women?
Well, I think the numbers still suggest men are cheating more, but women are rapidly catching up. So, and I think it's because most people believe it has to do with the fact that women are now in the workplace. And for women, at least half of the affairs they have are at work, where men, it's closer to like 80-90% of the affairs they have are at work.
And what is it about work? It's because we spend most of our time with the people we're bonding with, we're eating with, we're sharing our secrets with.
That's what happens. You know, people get on a project together, they start having lunch, they start having meetings. You know, it's when it becomes that one-on-one and people start hiding it, start sharing secrets, start complaining about their partner, that it becomes a problem. And that's one of the warning signs. You know, a happy marriage isn't necessarily going to protect you from that.
No.
You can find yourself in a very innocent situation, and the next thing you know, some chemistry, some sparks are flying, and it's like, boy, something must be missing at home. And that's usually what the partner hears at home. You know, things aren't the way they used to be, you know, and they just start making comments like that. It's like a gradual thing, and most people will say they had a feeling about it, but they couldn't put their finger on it. But that's what happens. You have chemistry with somebody else, all of a sudden the other person isn't so attractive. So the key is for couples to keep talking about that.
Well, what if you do notice that you're developing quite a great relationship with somebody at work, and they're suddenly looking a lot more attractive to you, and you're thinking, I shouldn't be having these feelings about you, and I'm a happily married person.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, it's actually a gradual process. It doesn't really go from one point to the next.
Not 1 minute they walk by and you say, whoa.
You know, usually maybe your spouse will say, gee, you've been talking to, you know, John a lot lately. You know, I really have. You know, we've been working on this project, and to get that conversation going in your marriage, in your primary relationship, is really what counts. And people stop doing that. Oh, I'm having these feelings, I better hide them. And that's the first sign of trouble right there, when they start to hide those feelings rather than sharing them with their partner, because that keeps going and going, and the next thing you know, you're having fantasies about the person, and all you need is for one person to initiate the contact, and it's all over.
So what should you do? Should you distance yourself from that person at work?
Yes.
Really put up the wall? I can't work with you
Stop having lunch. You know, stop having after-hour meetings. You know, if you have a conference to go to, don't, you know, spend private time alone. It's really hard. And be talking to your partner about it. Let them know what's going on so you can talk about the feelings you're having and maybe how you had those feelings early in your relationship. You know, we're all more human than otherwise. And we're going to have attractions, whether we like it or not. The question is, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
And so it takes a certain degree of emotional maturity to keep the lines of communication open at home.
Oh, that must be tough when you tell somebody, yes, I'm attracted to somebody at work, and they're supposed to sort of understand.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier if you do it then than after an affair has started, because repairing after an affair is much more difficult. An affair is really one of the most serious traumas that a marriage can go through. So, you know, that's how I present it to people. If you don't talk now, what's going to happen if something happens? So it's much more traumatic and more difficult to overcome.
Well, let's talk about if something does happen. Somebody slips up.
Yes.
Something happens. How do you build up the trust after that? Is it fixable?
Well, it is if the person who has crossed the boundary is willing to be honest about it and open it up for discussion and end the other relationship, because that's the problem. And, you know, unfortunately, you have a third person involved, and if they don't want to give up, now you've got a triangle, and, you know, triangles are infamous in our stories, in our literature, and movies, what can happen. So I think the important thing is for couples to be talking about it. If the person who's cheating is not willing to talk about it, you got a problem.
So break up with the person you're not supposed to be seeing.
Yeah, that's right.
Go to your spouse, admit that you've cheated, and stand back.
Call me or call somebody to help process it. Or sometimes if you know other couples who have been through it, who talk about it. But that's pretty rare in our culture. But usually couples are going to need some help and support getting through the process because it is very sensitive. It's a betrayal. People aren't as upset about the sex, believe it or not, as they are about the betrayal. That you lied to me, how did you keep the secret, all of that stuff that breaks down trust. But I have couples who have been able to repair it when they keep the lines of communication open and they talk about it.
Even couples who the one that's been cheating has been caught, they didn't come forward, they were caught right in the act?
Well, it's usually not that bad, but that does happen. But usually it's that most people, once they're in the emotion, in that stage of lust, it's pretty hard to stop. You know, it's not something that people want to stop. So, yeah, you look like just like, ooh.
I'm worried. I'm a little worried here.
But you know, it's a good thing to be worried about. I say, you know, a happy marriage can't protect us all. The more interesting you are, the more vital your life is, the more you participate in the world, the more opportunity to meet interesting people. So how do you talk about that in your relationship to form a protective boundary, a protective net around your relationship? Talking about it. You know, if my husband says that, you know, one of his patients was a really interesting, smart woman, I usually get my little radar up and say, I think he likes interesting and smart women. So I might say something
you
about
are an interesting and smart woman.
And, you know, vice versa. So it's being able to talk about that in the relationship that it's sort of like a protection. One of the few you can have, really, these days.
Let's talk quickly about the PAIRS program.
Yes.
Is that something that people should go through before they even walk down the aisle?
Anytime. You know, people's lives are very complicated, and when people are ready to do things. But it's a relationship skills course. It's the manual we all should have gotten about how to have a relationship based on love and equality and peer relationship, which men's and women's roles have changed so much in the last 25, 30 years. We really do need knowledge and skills. And many problems can be fixed and many problems can be avoided. So we have a range of programs and, you know, people can get a schedule. I have free introductory sessions so people can learn more about it because in our culture you're not supposed to talk about your relationships.
You're right. And we do more to maintain our vehicles than we do to maintain our
How about what we spend on getting married? I just was reading some numbers, you know, and so I say to people, you know, here's a course for $200, and they look at you like, oh, I don't know about that.
It's an investment that's worth making.
Yeah, it's like an insurance policy, really.
It certainly is. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
joining us today. And if you would like to learn more about the PAIRS program, you can call or visit the website. It's www.marriagedoctor.com.